Hello and welcome. Today, you're not just going to hear a story. You're going to feel it, live it, learn from it. This is the real untold story of a woman who started with absolutely nothing and built one of the most powerful brands in the world. From a small bed in an orphanage to dressing queens, movie stars, and presidents' wives. From sewing in silence to changing fashion forever. Her name is Coco Chanel, but she wasn't born Coco. She created herself. She designed her life like a masterpiece, and she taught the world this one truth. Elegance is not about wealth. It's about strength. And in this series, you will learn how to turn your pain into power, how to build your identity from scratch, how to become unforgettable, just like a brand, how to speak and understand English better through powerful storytelling. So grab your notebook, turn off all distractions. This is not just a story. It's a life-changing experience, and your English will get better with every word. Now let's begin. Part 1. The Girl in the Orphanage. Before the perfume, the handbags, the luxury, the logo, before the world said Chanel means elegance, there was a little girl named Gabrielle Bonheur Chanel. She was born on August 19, 1883 in Saumur, France. A small town, quiet, dusty roads, gray skies, no sign of fashion, no sign of fame. Her father's name was Albert Chanel, a street vendor. He sold clothes and random goods. Her mother's name was Jeanne Devol, tired, sick, overworked, always coughing. They had 5 children. Gabrielle was the second. They were poor, very poor. Not the we can't buy toys kind of poor, the we don't know if we'll eat tomorrow kind. When Gabrielle was just 12 years old, something happened that changed her life forever. Her mother died. She had been sick for years, tuberculosis, no hospitals, no medicine, just pain. And one day she stopped breathing. Gabrielle stood in the corner of the room, silent. Her younger siblings were crying. But she just stood there. She was numb, cold, broken. After the funeral, her father, Albert Chanel, packed a small bag. He kissed the children, once, and then he walked away. He didn't come back, not in a week, not in a year, not ever. He abandoned them. And just like that, Gabrielle Chanel became an orphan. She was sent to an orphanage run by Catholic nuns in Aubazine, deep in the countryside of France. The building was gray, cold. The nuns were strict, silent, always praying, no laughing, no dancing, no joy. But in this prison of silence, something strange happened. Gabrielle learned discipline, she learned simplicity, and most importantly, she learned to sew. With a small needle and some black cloth, she stitched her first lines of fabric. She didn't know it then, but those stitches would change the world. At the orphanage, everything was black and white. The clothes, the beds, the curtains, the uniforms. To the world, black meant grief. To Gabrielle, it became a color of strength. She once said, "I imposed black. It's still going strong today because black wipes out everything else around." The beginning of Coco. At 18, she left the orphanage and moved to a small town called Moulins. There, she started working as a seamstress by day. And at night, she sang in cabarets, local bars where men drank and women entertained. She wasn't a great singer, but she had energy, confidence, mystery. She sang a song called Qui a vu Coco? Who has seen Coco? People began calling her Coco. Some say it was short for coquette, a flirt. Others say it was the song. She never corrected them, because she liked it. She was no longer Gabrielle, the orphan. She was Coco, the woman she invented. While singing, Coco met a rich young man named Etienne Balsan, a former cavalry officer. He was handsome, charming, full of money. He took Coco into his luxurious world: horses, rich women in heavy dresses, champagne and silk, gold mirrors and fur. She saw it all. But she didn't admire the women. She thought their clothes were too heavy, too decorated, too fake. She whispered to herself, a woman should feel free in her body, not trapped in fabric. Balsan let her live in his castle-like home. There she designed hats, simple, elegant, different. And soon, other women wanted them. Then came Arthur Boy Capel, an English businessman and Balsan's friend. He wasn't just rich. He was wise, respectful, and he saw Coco's fire. He told her, "You don't belong in someone else's house. You should have your own name on a building." He believed in her. He gave her $3,000 to open her first shop. That's nearly $90,000 today. Coco said, "He gave me the courage to become me." She opened her first boutique in Paris at 21 Rue Cambon. The sign said, Chanel Modes, Chanel Fashion. She sold hats at first, simple, bold, different. In a world where fashion meant big feathers and corsets, Coco gave women freedom, and they loved it. Actresses wore her hats. Rich women whispered her name. Chanel, Chanel, Chanel. A brand was born. The year was 1910. In Paris, the streets were busy with horse-drawn carriages. The Eiffel Tower had only been standing for 21 years, and the world of fashion was controlled by men. Women were still wearing corsets, tight, uncomfortable underclothes that squeezed their bodies to make their waists look tiny. It was painful. It was tradition. It was considered beautiful. But Coco Chanel didn't agree. She looked around and said, "Why should a woman suffer to look beautiful? Why should fashion control us? Why can't we be free?" At the time, this idea was shocking. But Coco didn't care. She didn't want to follow fashion. She wanted to redefine it. At first, she only sold hats. But after her shop became popular, she began making clothes. Clothes that were simple, elegant, and most importantly, comfortable. She used jersey fabric. That was a cheap, stretchy material used mostly for men's underwear back then. Other designers laughed at her. "Women don't wear that. It's too plain, too poor," they said. But Chanel didn't care. She said, "Luxury must be comfortable. Otherwise, it is not luxury." And for the first time, women felt free. They could move, breathe, walk without pain, and still look beautiful. That was the real beginning of the Chanel brand. She was not selling clothes. She was selling independence. World War I, when fashion went quiet. In 1914, the world changed. World War I had begun. Explosions, fear, separation, death. Everything slowed down. Factories were destroyed. Families were torn apart. Paris was no longer the city of love. It was the city of survival. But even in that pain, Coco Chanel found opportunity. While many businesses closed, she kept working. She moved to Deauville, a coastal town, and opened a new shop. Women had no time for fashion shows. They needed clothes they could work in, run in, live in. So she made simple dresses, loose pants, cardigans, and hats that stayed on in the wind. This was not just fashion. This was resistance. Coco Chanel was designing for survival, not just beauty. And people noticed. Her clothes became a symbol of a new kind of woman. Not a decoration, but a force. In 1919, Coco's life took a painful turn. Her lover and supporter, Arthur Boy Capel, died in a car crash on the French Riviera. He was only 38 years old. Coco rushed to the site. She stood by the wreckage. The man who gave her money, support, belief, and love was gone. She cried, not loudly, but deeply. And then she said something unforgettable. In losing Capel, I lost everything. She wore black for weeks, months, years. But she didn't stop, because pain didn't destroy her. It became part of her identity. In 1926, Coco Chanel did something that shocked the fashion world again. She released a short, simple black dress. No decoration, no feathers, no bright colors, just black. Elegant, clean, confident. It was the exact opposite of everything popular at the time. Before that, black was only worn at funerals. It was the color of grief, the color of death. But Coco transformed it. She said, I want to give women the power to feel strong. Black is the color of power. That dress became known as the little black dress. And it changed fashion history. Even Vogue magazine wrote, the Chanel little black dress is the fashion equivalent of the Ford Model T. It was simple, universal, and perfect for every woman. In the early 1920s, Coco Chanel had another idea. She wanted to create a perfume, but not just a scent. She wanted to create an emotion. Until then, most perfumes were based on a single flower: rose, lavender, jasmine. But Coco didn't want a flower. She wanted a mystery. So she worked with a Russian-born French perfumer named Ernest Beau. He created 10 samples. She chose number 5. She liked the number. It was simple, clean, and felt lucky. She called it Chanel number 5. It was the first perfume to use synthetic aldehydes, which made the scent last longer and feel more modern. She released it in a simple square glass bottle. No gold, no curves, no decoration. And she said, a woman should smell like a woman, not like a flower. It became an instant classic, and it remains one of the best-selling perfumes in the world even today, over 100 years later. At its peak, Chanel number 5 was selling 1 bottle every 30 seconds around the world. To sell Chanel number 5, Coco partnered with 2 businessmen, Pierre Wertheimer and his brother Paul. They had the factories, the money, the distribution channels. She had the name and the vision. But the deal they made was unfair. She agreed to 10% of the profits. The Wertheimer brothers would get 70%, and her partner Théophile Bader would get 20%. Later, she realized how much she had lost. Chanel number 5 was making millions of dollars, and she was getting only a small share. She felt angry, betrayed, and tried for years to fight back legally. But she couldn't break the contract. Still, she kept building her empire. Because Coco Chanel was not just a designer, she was a warrior in silk gloves. By the late 1920s, Coco Chanel had become more than a woman. She was a symbol of simplicity over noise, strength over weakness, elegance over decoration, identity over imitation. She rejected trends. She believed in style, not fashion. She said, fashion fades. Only style remains the same. She believed women should walk with confidence, speak with calm power, wear what makes them feel free, not what makes them feel controlled. Her ideas were not just about fabric. They were about freedom. Part 2. The Fall of a Legend. At the end of the 1920s, Coco Chanel was not just a fashion designer anymore. She was an empire. Her perfume Chanel number 5 was selling across the world. Her clothes were worn by royalty, actresses, and the richest women in Europe. Her name had become more powerful than any label. She was making more money than almost any woman of her time. Her shops were full. Her ideas were copied. The world had finally caught up to Coco. But then came something she could not control. A second war. A war that would not just destroy countries. It would almost destroy everything she had built. By the year 1931, Coco was at the top of her fame. She traveled to Hollywood. There she met Samuel Goldwyn, one of the biggest film producers in America. He offered her $1 million to design costumes for MGM actresses. That's equal to more than $18 million today. It was a powerful deal. But Coco didn't like the film world. She said Hollywood women wore too much makeup, too many jewels. They didn't understand her style. They wanted fantasy. Coco wanted freedom. She returned to France, to her world, her rules, her people. But soon, none of that would matter, because the world was about to change again. World War II begins. In 1939, World War II broke out. Germany invaded Poland. Europe fell into fear. France began to break. Coco was 56 years old. Her fashion house was strong. Her perfume was still selling. But she made a decision that shocked many. She closed her shop at 31 Rue Cambon, Paris. She said, "This is no time for fashion." She believed women had more important things to think about. And maybe deep down she was tired. Tired of fame, of competition, of the constant fight. She disappeared from the fashion world. But not from history. Because during the war, Coco Chanel entered the darkest chapter of her life. A chapter filled with secrets, rumors, accusations, and pain. During the war, Coco began a romantic relationship with a man named Hans Gunther von Dinklage. He was a German aristocrat, a former soldier, and a diplomat. But many people believed he was more than that. They believed he was a Nazi intelligence officer. This connection brought Coco Chanel under suspicion. Some said she became his lover for safety. Others said it was for power. Some said it was love. No one knows the full truth. But this relationship would cause her reputation to collapse after the war. Let's go back to the perfume Chanel number 5. It was still owned and distributed by the Wertheimer family. They were Jewish businessmen from France. During the war, the Nazis forced Jewish families to give up their businesses. Coco saw an opportunity. She tried to take back full control of her perfume by writing to the German authorities saying, "The owners of my perfume are Jews. Under the laws of occupation, I should now own it fully." This was a dangerous and morally questionable move. Later, some would say she did it out of revenge because she never liked the deal. Others would say it was an act of greed. Some believed she just wanted to survive. But the truth is, it happened. And the moment people found out, her name became a shadow of what it once was. But the Wertheimer family was smart. Before leaving France, they had legally protected their business by giving it temporarily to a non-Jewish Frenchman. So Coco's plan failed. They returned after the war and kept control of the business. In 1944, France was liberated. The Nazis were defeated. The French began looking for people who had helped the enemy. Coco Chanel was arrested. She was taken in for questioning about her relationship with Hans von Dinklage and her wartime activities. But she was released after a few hours. Why? Many believe she had help from her powerful British friends, including Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Churchill had met Coco years earlier through mutual friends. Some say he used his influence to protect her. Whatever the reason, Coco was freed. But she was no longer welcome in France. People whispered. They called her a traitor. Some refused to speak her name. So Coco did something she had never done before. She ran away. After the war, Coco left Paris and moved to Switzerland. She lived in a hotel. Quiet, private. Her days were spent walking by lakes, smoking in silence, reading newspapers, watching fashion from a distance. The world moved on. New designers had arrived. Dior, Balenciaga, Givenchy. They created designs full of glamour, wide skirts, tiny waists, long gloves. Women loved them. But Coco? She hated what she saw. She said, "Dior doesn't dress women. He upholsters them." She believed fashion had returned to slavery, corsets, weight, discomfort. But still, she said nothing. For 15 years, Coco Chanel remained silent. She was 71 years old. Too old for fashion, people thought. Too broken by war. Too hated by the past. Too forgotten by the present. But Coco was not done. She was never done. Because legends do not end quietly. They return when no one expects them to. In the late 1950s, Coco Chanel made a decision that would shock the entire world. She would return. After 15 years of silence, after being canceled, hated, exiled, after being told she was too old, too late, too forgotten, she would reopen her fashion house in Paris. People laughed. Designers rolled their eyes. Fashion magazines ignored her. But Coco was not coming back for applause. She was coming back for revenge. She said, "I don't care what you think of me." I never cared. In 1954, Coco Chanel walked into her old building, 31 Rue Cambon, and began again. She created a new collection. Simple suits, soft jackets, comfortable skirts, gold buttons, pearls, style, freedom, movement, just like before. She didn't try to follow the new world. She simply became herself again. And slowly, the world remembered who she was. The year was 1954. She returned to 31 Rue Cambon, the same Paris building where it all began. She walked up the grand staircase with mirrors on all sides. In those mirrors, she didn't see an old woman. She saw fire, confidence, purpose. She reopened her fashion house. She brought back her tailors, her sketchbooks, her fabrics. And she began to work day and night, just like before. But now it was different. This time, she wasn't trying to build a name. She was trying to protect a legacy. In February 1954, Coco Chanel released her comeback collection. It included her signature style: soft collarless jackets, slim skirts that let women walk freely, tweed fabric trimmed in clean lines, long necklaces of pearls, two-tone shoes, and a calm, elegant color palette: beige, navy, white, black. She stood behind the curtain as models walked out wearing her designs. She didn't smile. She didn't tremble. She just waited. But when the show ended, there was no applause. The French press criticized her harshly. One called her a ghost from the past. Another wrote, "Madame Chanel is no longer relevant." Her heart broke. She didn't say a word, but she didn't stop. Because something happened she didn't expect. While the French fashion critics rejected her, the American fashion world fell in love. Magazines like Life, Harper's Bazaar, and Vogue US praised her new collection. They called it modern, fresh, liberating, and perfect for the new working woman. Buyers from New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and London placed massive orders. American actresses began wearing Chanel suits in films and public events. The same clothes that Paris had called boring were now called timeless. And Coco Chanel realized something important. The world still needed her. just not in the way it used to. She said, "I don't care what they think in Paris. I care what women feel when they wear my clothes." In the next few years, Coco focused on perfecting one thing: the Chanel suit. It was a jacket and skirt set made from soft tweed or wool. But it wasn't just about fabric. It was about freedom. Here's what made it different. The jacket had no collar, allowing neck movement. It had gold buttons inspired by uniforms. The skirt was straight, not tight, so women could walk normally. The jacket had silk lining, often matched with the blouse inside. There were real pockets, not just for decoration. It was designed to be worn without a corset. It was beautiful, but also practical. It was powerful, but not aggressive. It allowed women to move, breathe, work, and lead. This was not just a fashion item. It was a symbol of the new woman. Working women, independent women, business women, women who didn't want to wait for approval. Famous American First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy wore Chanel suits frequently, and the brand exploded in global fame. Coco also designed the now famous two-tone shoe. It was beige in the body with a black toe. But it wasn't just for style. She had a deeper reason. The beige color made the legs look longer. The black toe made the feet look smaller. It was an illusion. But Coco understood something most designers didn't. Fashion is psychology. She didn't care about trends. She cared about how clothes made women feel: strong, confident, proud, free. Even in her 70s, Coco Chanel worked like a young soldier. She lived at the Hotel Ritz in Paris, the most luxurious hotel in the city. She woke up at 7 a.m., drank strong black coffee, ate very little, wore her signature suits, and walked to her atelier, her workshop. There she worked until midnight, every day. She was tough with her staff, demanding, perfectionist. She would tear apart a jacket if it didn't fall the way she wanted. She would restitch a button if the sound it made when it touched the table felt wrong. She didn't care how old she was. She didn't care about opinions. She had work to do. She said, "I am not young, but I'm not dead, and until I die, I will work." Coco never had children. She never married. She had many lovers in her life, but no one ever owned her, because time was her only true partner. She said, "I never wanted to be dependent. Love can fade, but work is forever." In a world where women were told to marry young and stay silent, Coco chose something else. She chose to build an empire, not a household. She chose to create style, not follow it. And now, in her late 70s, that empire was bigger than ever. By the end of the 1960s, Chanel had become one of the most recognized fashion brands in the world. Her designs were in Paris, London, New York, Los Angeles, Tokyo, Milan, and almost every capital city in Europe. Chanel No. 5 was still the best-selling perfume on earth. It was generating millions of dollars every year in revenue. The Wertheimer family still owned the majority of the perfume business. But Coco had regained control of her fashion house. Her clothes were worn by queens, first ladies, movie stars, businesswomen, and ordinary women who wanted to feel extraordinary. But Coco never celebrated publicly. She didn't go to parties. She didn't smile in magazines. She didn't take vacations. She simply worked. Every day, every moment. Part 3. The Woman Who Refused to Stop. Coco Chanel was now in her late 70s. She had returned to fashion with full power. Her brand was once again strong in France, beloved in America, and respected around the world. She was living at the luxurious Hotel Ritz in Paris, not just as a guest, but as a symbol of timeless success. But Coco was not spending her final years relaxing. She was still working every single day, as if she were still 30 years old and chasing a dream. Because Coco never worked for money. She worked for control, for beauty, for freedom, and for immortality. Every day of Coco Chanel's life was organized, disciplined, and intentional. She woke up early in the morning, always alone. She preferred silence in the morning. No phone calls, no meetings, no noise. She would drink a hot cup of black coffee, often with a small croissant. She didn't eat much. Her meals were light, controlled, simple, like her designs. She bathed, applied her signature Chanel number, 5 perfume, and she always wore a suit. Never pajamas, never lazy clothes. To her, every day was a chance to design life. She once said, "Dress poorly, and they remember the dress. Dress perfectly, and they remember the woman." After preparing herself, she would leave the Ritz and walk a short distance to her atelier, her private workspace above the Chanel boutique at 31 Rue Cambon. There she began her real work. Coco designed her workplace like a temple. There was a grand staircase lined with mirrors. She had placed them in a way that she could sit upstairs and secretly observe the models and clients walking in the store downstairs, without being seen herself. She did this so she could understand how people moved, reacted, and felt. Fashion for Coco was never about clothes. It was about energy, confidence, and movement. She watched in silence. And when something didn't feel right, she changed it. She changed the buttons. She changed the shape of the collar. She adjusted the way the skirt moved when a woman walked fast. She demanded that every outfit must serve the woman, not the other way around. She was nearly 80 years old, but she worked harder than anyone around her. Coco Chanel was known to be tough, demanding, and often ruthless in her pursuit of perfection. She could fire someone over a single mistake. She could cancel an entire collection the day before a show if it didn't meet her vision. Her tailors, dressmakers, and assistants respected her deeply, but they also feared her presence. She didn't smile often. She didn't allow laziness. She didn't tolerate excuses. But she was never unfair. She knew every worker by name. She personally checked every piece of fabric. She believed that every thread carried emotion, and if that emotion wasn't right, the dress would fail. And most importantly, she still worked with her own hands. She didn't just sit on a throne and give orders. She stood next to her staff and sewed when needed. She was the queen who still used the needle. By this time, the name Chanel had become more than a brand. It had become a global identity. And the women who wore Chanel were not just rich. They were powerful. They were modern. They were working women, leaders, thinkers, creators. Her most famous clients included Jacqueline Kennedy, First Lady of the United States, Princess Grace of Monaco, Elizabeth Taylor, Brigitte Bardot, Romy Schneider. But Chanel never treated celebrities like gods. She always said, "My clothes are for women with character," not women who want to decorate themselves. She believed that a woman should be the main story, not her dress. Even in her older age, Coco Chanel had a sharp business mind. She understood that a brand is not about product, it's about feeling. She controlled every detail of her label, from the packaging, store layout, advertising, models, logos, colors, even the lighting in the shops. She made sure every Chanel store looked and smelled the same. She wanted it to feel like walking into a dream. One of her smartest business moves was continuing to let the Wertheimer family manage Chanel number 5 while she controlled the fashion side. She had tried to take back full ownership earlier in her life and failed. But now she had a peaceful agreement. The Wertheimers handled the distribution, marketing, and production. She handled the design, direction, and identity. It was a silent partnership, but one that made both sides millions of dollars. Chanel number 5 continued to sell across the world, generating tens of millions of dollars every year. And that perfume alone became one of the most successful consumer products in history. In her final years, journalists tried to ask Coco about love, marriage, and regret, but she never gave them what they wanted. She had loved many men in her life. Some rich, some poor, some French, some British, some married, some not. But none of them stayed, and Coco never chased anyone. She said, "As long as you know men are like children, you know everything." About marriage, she said, "I never wanted to be a wife. I wanted to be the boss." About beauty, she said, "Nature gives you the face you have at 20. Life shapes the face you have at 30. But at 50, you get the face you deserve." These were not just quotes. These were her laws. She believed that beauty was not makeup. It was discipline, style, simplicity, and confidence. She once told a model, "If your shoes are comfortable, your smile will be real." And that's fashion. Even in her final months, Coco Chanel never stopped working. She was in her late 80s, but still creating sketches, adjusting patterns, and preparing collections. She would walk into her atelier with her cane in one hand and a cigarette in the other. She would tell her workers, "Keep working. We're not dead yet." She hated laziness more than illness. She hated dishonesty more than pain. And she hated giving up more than death. Every day she wore her signature pearls, sprayed Chanel number 5 on her wrists, and walked like she owned the city. And in many ways, she did. Because Paris had never seen another woman like her. Part 4. The final stitch. Coco Chanel was now in her late 80s. She had spent almost 7 decades building her life from nothing. From sewing in a silent orphanage to dressing queens, stars, and presidents' wives. She was not just a woman anymore. She was a symbol. She was not just a designer. She was a movement, and not just a name. She was a timeless idea. Her days were quieter now, but she still refused to stop working. Every morning she would wake up in her private suite at the Ritz Paris, room number 302, alone but never lonely. She would sit by the window with her coffee, wearing her usual clean, structured jacket and strands of pearls, looking down at the busy Paris street. Even in her final year, she was still going to her atelier, still correcting fabrics, still directing fittings, still designing, still ruling. But the end was near, and Coco could feel it. It was January 9th, 1971, a Saturday. Paris was cold. The streets were wet with melted snow. The sky was gray. Inside the Chanel atelier, the tailors and dressmakers were working quietly. Coco entered the room around 9 a.m. She was slower now, her steps shorter, but her eyes still sharp. She walked around, looked at the newest sketches, touched the tweed of a jacket, and gave instructions to her assistant. "Make the collar higher. The woman's neck must look longer. The sleeve must fall softer." Even at 87, she had the energy of someone fighting for her first collection. She stayed until 5 p.m., longer than anyone expected. Before leaving, she looked at one of her favorite models and said, "You see, that's how you live. Working." always working. Then she returned to the Ritz. She took a bath. She had dinner. She called her maid. Everything was quiet. Paris went to sleep, and so did she. On Sunday, January 10th, 1971, at around 9 a.m., the hotel maid entered her room with breakfast. Coco Chanel was lying on her bed, one hand under her cheek, one arm resting on her side. Her eyes closed. Peaceful. She had died in her sleep. The doctor said it was natural causes. No pain, no struggle, just rest. Her final words, spoken the night before, were, "You see, this is how you die." The news spread quickly across France, then across Europe, then the world. The newspapers printed her face. Photographers stood outside the Ritz. The fashion world went silent. Because something more than a person had passed. A chapter of human history had closed. Coco Chanel's funeral was held on January 13th, 1971 at the Church of the Madeleine in Paris. Hundreds of people came, models, designers, writers, business leaders, friends, enemies. Many women wore Chanel suits, many sprayed Chanel number, 5 on their wrists before walking in. The front row was filled with flowers, mostly white camellias, her favorite. She had once said, "A woman should be like a flower." Beautiful, yes, but also able to grow anywhere. They placed her body in a white casket, wearing one of her signature suits, her pearls around her neck, and a final mist of Chanel number, 5 on her collarbone. It was not just a goodbye, it was a farewell to an era. After Coco Chanel passed away, people thought the brand might collapse, but it didn't, because Chanel was never just Coco. She had built a system, a structure, a soul. Her atelier continued to work under her last instructions. In the years that followed, the Wertheimer family, the original owners of Chanel No. 5, bought the fashion side of Chanel too. They became the full owners of Chanel SA and decided to keep the brand alive, not just as a memory, but as a living, evolving symbol. They invested in the brand, protected her legacy, and in 1983, they made the most important decision. They hired a new creative director to lead the brand. His name was Karl Lagerfeld. Karl Lagerfeld understood Coco's vision deeply, but he also knew something important. He knew that to keep a legend alive, you don't copy it. You evolve it. Under his leadership, the Chanel brand reached younger generations, created fashion shows across the world, built luxury stores in Tokyo, Dubai, New York, and Beijing, introduced modern designs while protecting the core values of Coco's simplicity, structure, and elegance. And today, Chanel is one of the most successful and profitable fashion brands in the world. It generates billions of dollars in revenue every year. Chanel No. 5 is still one of the best-selling perfumes on the planet. The double C logo is known in every corner of the world. The Chanel suit is still worn by celebrities, politicians, and leaders. The two-tone shoe, the little black dress, the beige and black color scheme, and the signature pearls, all still live on. Coco is gone, but her soul is stitched into every fabric, every store, every bottle, and every runway. Coco Chanel once said, "My life didn't please me, so I created my life." That is the lesson. She didn't come from power. She wasn't rich. She wasn't born beautiful. She wasn't protected by anyone. She lost her mother at 12. She was abandoned by her father. She lived in an orphanage. She was rejected by many. She faced heartbreak, betrayal, and war. She was called a traitor, a woman of scandal, a failure. But she refused to become a victim. She trained her hands. She trained her eye. She trained her mind. and she built an empire out of needles, fabric, and silence. She taught women that style is not decoration. It is dignity. She proved to the world that a woman could rise without marriage, build without help, and remain elegant without ever being owned. As promised, through this long, emotional journey, you didn't just learn Coco's story. You learned how to read, feel, and understand English in a new way. You learned how to follow a long, real biography. You saw how powerful storytelling improves your vocabulary, your sentence rhythm, and your understanding. And most importantly, you saw that language becomes more powerful when it connects to emotion. And that was the story of Coco Chanel. Not just a fashion designer, not just a perfume bottle, not just a name stitched into luxury, but a girl who had every reason to fail and still built a name the world would never forget. She didn't just design clothes. She designed identity. She taught us that silence can be powerful, that pain can become your brand, and that no matter where you begin, you have the right to create a life worth remembering. So if you're lost, if you're tired, if the world doubts you, remember this: you don't have to be born lucky. You just have to be brave enough to begin. Now it's your turn to build your name, your story, your empire. And if this story moved you, taught you, or gave you even a small spark, subscribe now, because on this channel, we don't just tell stories, we create legends, and we teach English through the fire of real life. So subscribe and join a journey that changes everything. Your life is waiting.